help determine the main causes of my IBS symptoms. It really does go back to my... Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and I have created this channel to document my journey around holistic healing and gut health. Around 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with IBS and seen numerous primary care doctors, nurses, gastrologists, and holistic doctors to see how I can heal my body. I have officially decided to move on to a new naturopathic doctor. I really go into more detail about my whole IBS journey and path towards healing, how my symptoms started, why I think they started, and every doctor and test I have seen up until this point. Today, I wanted to dive into my first appointment working with a new naturopathic doctor in New York City. I also created a video on how to find a naturopathic or functional medicine doctor for you wherever you may be, and the specific types of questions you should ask to see if you want to work with them as a practitioner. So I will also link that video. That one is definitely more informational. This is more of a story about my first appointment, the questions I asked her, what we talked about, and the protocol I am now going to start. So I have to admit, I'm a little bit late. I did have this appointment about a month ago, but I have been working on a new blog going into way more detail about my IBS journey. So I haven't really had the chance to make a long form video and talk about my first appointment. For a while, I was struggling to find a new naturopathic doctor to work with. If you don't know what functional medicine or naturopath medicine is, it's essentially looking at the root cause of the illness that you have. These are primary care doctors that diagnose, treat, and manage acute and chronic conditions. They look at your body from a holistic perspective, looking at your mind, body, and spirit, identify and treat the causes of your problems, not just your symptoms. And if you know me, that is something I've been talking about from the beginning. I don't want a doctor that's just going to look at my symptoms and, give me a prescription for this or an antibiotic for that, because I know that's not really what's going to heal me at the end. It's just going to lead to further issues down the line. So when working with a naturopathic doctor, they really do look at you from a holistic perspective. For about 2 years, I was working with a holistic chiropractor. Not my first choice. It just so happened that I was having a series of migraines and she was able to help me overcome that. And she also specialized in gut health a little bit and had experience working with patients who had IBS symptoms and candida overgrowth. So I worked with her on that part of my journey. I knew I needed to find a new doctor because when I was working with this holistic chiropractor, we had just run our course and exhausted all options, and my symptoms were starting to get worse again. So I decided I need a new opinion. I needed someone who actually specialized in gut health and digestive disorders and could restart this conversation around my gut health journey. My first consultation with this naturopathic doctor was an hour and a half long. And I literally spent probably the first half hour just telling her my life story around IBS. We touched on when I first started experiencing symptoms and what those symptoms looked like. I talked about seeing a whole variety of doctors and them not being able to diagnose me with anything. Then finding out that I had candida overgrowth a year ago, and I went into so much detail about the candida diet, the supplements I was on. Because I know this is a very holistic perspective of my health, I even talked about issues that weren't directly linked to my digestive health. So yes, I have bloating, constipation, diarrhea, gas, nausea. I just feel inflamed. I don't feel hungry. All of those things that are directly linked to my digestive health. But I also talked about my mental health. I talked about how I feel anxious a lot of the times. I feel really stressed. There's some days I just feel depressed because I feel so sick. I also talked about my history with birth control. I've been on the pill for about 8 years, but I stopped taking it last year because I realized it was probably hurting me more than it was helping me, and I switched over to the Paragard IUD, which is non-hormonal. I'll do a whole video on that because I actually love it, and I want to talk more about the reasons why I switched. And then I also talked about my migraines too, how they don't come often, but when they come, they really knock me out. This call certainly wasn't about me the entire time. I did take the opportunity to ask her questions too, especially whenever we started diving more into the next steps and protocols she wanted me on. I did learn a lot about this naturopathic doctor whenever I had a 15-minute consultation with her. I already got all of those questions out of the way on what you should ask your naturopathic doctor before you begin working with them. So I already had an understanding of this before going into my first consultation, but I did make sure to bring up, how would the next appointment look? When do you want to start on these supplements or these protocols? And can I order additional testing? So I did have the opportunity to bring those up after I gave her my whole life story. And it really was a two-way conversation, which I personally felt very appreciative of. About a half hour of me just telling her my whole life story of when these symptoms really began and how I'm feeling today. She helped to guide the conversation. She asked me questions about my childhood, if I got sick a lot when I was a kid, and did I use antibiotics? The answer was yes, I did get sick a lot. I had a lot of sinus infections and allergies and just, flu or strep or just random stuff like that, and I probably have taken over 10 rounds of antibiotics. Continuing to talk about my childhood, she also asked me if I was birthed vaginally or through a C-section, which I thought was really interesting. I was birthed vaginally, but it's because that can still play a role in your gut microbiome makeup today. She also asked me questions about my time when I studied abroad, because these symptoms came after I returned from being in Italy for 5 months. Specifically, she asked if I got sick at one point during Italy, which surprisingly, that was the first time in my life where I didn't have seasonal allergies, so I didn't get sick. But then she asked me if I drank a lot. And let me tell you, I was in Italy for 5 months. I traveled a lot. I was also 20 at the time, and you could drink legally in Europe, so I really did drink wine every day. It was hard to admit that you were drinking heavily, because I think we are in such a culture where drinking heavily, especially whenever you're in college or you're abroad, is just so normalized. And that did feel normal, but drinking heavily does impact your gut microbiome and does impact your overall health and well-being. It creates a lot of inflammation in your body, a lot of stress, unnecessary anxiety, and it's just toxic. So it does impact your liver function as well. So heavy drinking for a period of time in Italy, but also through college, has really impacted my gut microbiome, inflammation within my body, and just my overall health and well-being. With that being said, I talked to her about how I have changed my drinking habits within the past year. I do not drink nearly as often as I once did. That was just totally unsustainable what I was doing in college. I don't even go out and drink every weekend now, which is such a huge lifestyle change. But honestly, it's for the best, because I realized how much I hated waking up on Saturday mornings just hungover, missing out on my whole day, and then also just having that wave of anxiety too. It was just not the lifestyle I wanted to live anymore. Not to say that I am sober now and I don't drink. I do still like going out, going to happy hours. I'm just a lot more mindful about how much I'm consuming and how often I'm consuming it. She also asked me more questions about my lifestyle now, what I'm eating day to day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how much water I'm drinking, do I exercise, and do I sweat? With my answer, I was, again, extremely transparent. I think that's the number one thing you have to be whenever you're talking to a new doctor, especially. My diet really has shifted a lot over the past few years. Growing up in a Southern household with a dad from Missouri and a mom from Texas, I was not shy to fried and processed foods, just a lot of animal fat, high sugar, lots of carbs, really just the typical American diet. That's just the type of world we live in, and I don't think my family knew any better, but it wasn't the healthiest of healthy foods, Eating that for most of my life, by the time I went to college, that was really an opportunity for me to take control of my eating habits and what I was putting into my body. So I started moving to a more whole foods based diet, not one that was like vegan or vegetarian, but just eating more whole foods and cutting back a lot on added sugar and processed foods. Thinking back, I don't know how much that helped, because I would still drink every weekend, it's all about balance, right? But now really within the past few years since I graduated and I've been living on my own, I really have been focusing on my diet. I eat oatmeal or eggs in the morning. I usually make my own snacks. I don't buy snacks from the store. If I do, it's like nuts or nut butters or rice cakes. I'll eat a lot of yogurt with berries. I will usually eat a salad for lunch. Dinner, I will have some type of poultry or beef along with rice and potatoes and more vegetables. I really have shifted my lifestyle like that. I'll still go out and eat pizza and pasta and tacos, and I love cooking that stuff as well, but I just save that more for the weekends. And we talked about my current sleeping habits. I've been waking up at 5 a.m. so I am nice and in bed by 9 p.m. so I can get 7 to 8 hours. I don't really have a hard time falling asleep as much anymore, but I do have trouble staying asleep and will often wake up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I have to wake up and like go use the bathroom and stuff like that. Another thing she asked me were about my stress levels. Like, am I a stressed person? Sadly, I am. I do lean more on the stress and the worry and the anxiety side. I think my gut definitely plays a part in that. And I notice whenever I do have IBS flare-ups that my anxiety, my stress is a lot worse. And I do my best to manage this. I'll work out in the mornings. I love weightlifting and strength training. I also love doing yoga. I'll reduce my caffeine intake. I'll try to take a walk in the middle of the afternoon or at the end of the evening, do breath work and journaling, all of the like self-care stuff that you should be doing to manage your stress. I try my best to do them. I am not a perfect person at all, and I will find sometimes I'm just really stressed and overwhelmed. I had to be fully honest about everything I'm going through, because if she doesn't have a transparent look into how my life is right now, she's not going to be able to help me. And a key part of meeting with this naturopathic doctor is that she uses my current lifestyle, my current symptoms, the past tests I've taken to really help with my overall diagnosis. And again, heal me from a holistic perspective, heal my mental health with my physical health. I had to be fully transparent about all of this. It really does go back to my lifestyle, how I was raised, and what I ate, what my environment was conducive to, which really sucks because it's like when you're a kid, you're not in control of that. And I have no shame, no regrets to my parents and my family for how they raised me. I'm just simply a product of my environment, and now I'm going to take this opportunity to see how I can learn and change that moving forward. So one of the main causes of my IBS was a weakened immune system from heavy antibiotic use whenever I was a kid, teenager, and even a young adult. As I mentioned, I've taken probably over 10 rounds of antibiotics, which created so much havoc within my body and has allowed the bad bacteria to outweigh the good. I also had a period of heavy drinking through college and especially my study abroad program. So again, that wreaked a lot of havoc on my gut, on my immune system, and just created a lot of inflammation and stress on my detoxification pathways. We also talked about processed food, how just a high sugar and high carb diet has contributed to my IBS symptom. Also, stress has been a really important factor. It has not allowed my body to really calm down if I'm constantly in this fight mode. And then lastly, birth control. Being on birth control for almost 8 years, it has created a hormonal imbalance in my body, and then again disrupted my gut microbiome. She was able to diagnose me from no other additional testing, which was absolutely fascinating, and then be able to design a protocol that was very unique to me. Together, we realized that I definitely have a food trigger. I have an imbalance to my gut microbiome, and my liver just is not really detoxifying properly. So I'm really happy with how my first consultation went, and I'll definitely keep you posted on how that next consultation does.